journalist most of my life, and after studying design, I felt I was working in architecture offices and I was trying to figure out what more could I do? Could I choosing better materials? Was there something I could do? And I wasn't finding it too much. And I discovered city planning was a way to do that and to focus on public transit. It took me a while to figure this out, but then I came out here to University of Pennsylvania to study city planning, really with a focus on transportation, public transportation, and to help people get out of their cars. I didn't know more than that going into it. So when I was at Penn, I learned more, and I saw that could be that could make huge environmental change. Learning city planning and learning about densities of cities all are part of that, even if they don't seem like something an environmentalist does. Encouraging people to live in cities with density, smaller footprints, using fewer resources is very much an environmentalist goal. So that led me then to Philly Car Share and starting that. I think it's wonderful. It had to happen because unfortunately their parents weren't doing anything. It comes from our history, I think, of we had the Depression where people were really deprived, so the next generation felt like if they had stuff, they should be able to get it. And there was no consciousness about the planet and where they were getting things. And so it finally comes to this next generation becoming very aware that this is going to it's already personally affecting people. And I have found it really moving to hear people's stories, young people's stories of, 1 year at summer camp, this was the situation. We used to use the ice as the refrigeration, and the next year there wasn't any. For that sort of change to impact people so directly is unfortunately how people decide to make change. Usually it's something that impacts somebody individually, and then they go, oh, wow, this is a big deal. So I'm really proud of people for standing up and making their voices heard. Just to go back a little bit, when we first started Philly Car Share, there were a lot of companies starting up. Zipcar was threatening to come here to Philadelphia, and so we always knew they were there. So we always felt the need to compete. That competition made us really good at what we did because we were competing against private auto ownership. And that is even bigger than Zipcar because it's so pervasive, the advertising, the money in it, the culture around owning a car and using a car. We actually had the idea early on that if one of these rental car companies bought one of our organizations, that they would shut it down. So in fact, they ended up buying the car share companies because they were doing so well and they saw it as a great market. So it's interesting to us, and it was exciting to us, even though we were competing against them, that instead of trying to shut it down, they embraced car sharing. It did pretty well. I have to say, in Philadelphia, they seemed to think they didn't need to do any marketing. So I didn't see much expansion. They could have done a lot more to continue to use on-street spaces, which were great advertising and a great way to let people know that car share was available and made for very safe ways to get access to cars, because we weren't going into garages. They stopped building their audience. People still knew about them, but newcomers to Philadelphia, and there are always newcomers, didn't necessarily know about car sharing. So that was kind of a shame, because our goal, and I feel like we achieved it, was that Philly Car Share would be like any utility you sign up for when you move to a new place. You sign up for electricity, you sign up for internet, and you sign up for Philly Car Share if you move to Philly, or you learn where your nearest pods are, whatever it is. So unfortunately, COVID is really put a damper on that. And I'm frankly glad I wasn't running one of those organizations during COVID, because it just kills business. So there were challenges that we were able to meet, but initially it was getting insurance. Frankly, as a car share company, we were able to piggyback on a city car share that was a nonprofit, because we were seeking our nonprofit status. We could go with their nonprofit insurance broker. And then it was, how are we going to get cars? We don't have any funding. Well, we had written a strong enough business plan, and on the strength of the character of the two of us who went to Enterprise and said, this is our business plan, we'd like a couple of cars. No collateral, nothing. They leased us cars. Some of the other hurdles, though, that we dealt with for years was just time. We didn't have any significant savings into building Philly Car Share. I volunteered my first 4 months, and then I got, a lousy sort of administrative assistant salary for the next year. And all the board members had their own jobs full time, and they volunteered on top of that, like hours upon hours. And I worked almost constantly. So it was definitely a labor of love, and it was totally worth it. But those were the challenges. And then for me, once I hired staff, because initially I was the only one of the co-founders who was a staff member. Managing staff and not expecting them to work those crazy hours, and I didn't. So we, managing our budget very carefully, making sure that we brought in enough revenue fast enough after adding each car so that we could support that, because we wanted to provide very high quality service. And that high quality service actually meant something to Philadelphians, because in other businesses, they don't get good quality service. So it was it was sort of its own advertising and word of mouth that helped us grow. For me, because I was in the day-to-day grind, I was just focusing on putting one step ahead of the others. And my co-founders were often looking at the big picture and like what all we could do. So I was always, the first time we saw an apartment ad posting that it's near this pod or that pod, it was just kind of mind-blowing. Like, wow, people really know about us. They know that they can advertise our presence as a bonus for that place. It was incredible. We had estimated, based on industry practice, what we'd seen before, the number of members per car, and we far exceeded that. People would say 12 to 20 members per car, and we signed up so many people that we might see 50 or 100, because people used cars less and less and less. We were providing the service, creating the service, and actually hoping they would use less of the service we provided, because that was our goal. So we needed to keep recruiting people. Winning the city contract, the city thought they needed to replace their 350 cars with 100 of ours. And in the end, when we discussed with each department what they actually needed cars for, and once each department was held accountable, they used on average 5 cars in our system. 2 they had at the municipal services lot, and the rest they could use anywhere in the system. So they really, really reduced their usage and kept good accountability, and they saved about $2 million a year. And it was just mind-blowing that this little thing we started could do so much. A lot of people consider themselves environmentalists. I think that creating systems more than products for people to live in more environmentally sound ways, creating a culture and an ethic that enables people to choose this as the easiest way to live is important. I mean, that's what we were trying to do with Philly Car Share. What other services, what other things can we use? Do we need to each own our own things in all regards, or is there more sharing that can be done? Do we all need to travel everywhere? It requires a lot of imagination, but it's a complex issue, and activism, I think, needs to look at who we are and who we want to be as people. A lot of people want to make an impact, and I completely understand that, but I think the way to go about that is to find what you're passionate about, the problem that you want to solve, and what aligns with your skills and your interests. If it makes a little bit of an impact or teaches you something and leads you to something else or helps somebody else or build a team to do something else, that's great. But starting out thinking, I'm going to do this great big thing is daunting and makes it, I think, really hard to do that. If you only think something's a really good idea but aren't passionate about it, you won't take it very far. But if it's the thing that gets you up in the morning, you are so drawn to it, then that's what you should be doing. A few years ago, I was attending, sporadically, I was attending my neighborhood safety committee, and we had a variety of projects. And when the chair decided to retire, I said, okay, I'll take it on, but I really want to focus on street safety. So everything I learned as a city planner or a city planning student, everything I learned from doing Philly Car Share and working with the city, building partnerships, all of that comes into play in running a committee like that. And then, of course, the knowledge of what can be done. Oh, we can put bike lanes here. Or if I didn't know the answers, I knew how to research them because it was just all very familiar to me. So we've just put in a protected bike lane. We're putting in, they're bump outs, but they're going to be defined by vertical delineators to protect intersections around the schools, the elementary schools in the neighborhood. And then the climate action platform, that came about, I was with a friend at a candidates night. We were talking to somebody who was thinking of running in the at-large council person race last year. We were just chatting with her and sharing some ideas. She wanted to run on a very green platform. So we were throwing all these ideas at her, and we decided to write them down. And then we decided to develop from that a climate action platform and really shop it around to all the candidates and see who would take it on and see who would share that as part of their vision so that we could get real strong candidates and people who would lead on this. Michael Nutter did so well in his mayoral campaign because his first debate was with was in front of environmentalists, and he was the only one who paid attention to the questions and took them seriously, and even coached. So we wanted to do that sort of thing. And we got a number of people interested, and now actually the person in charge of the environmental committee is using a lot of the climate action platform. And so that comes, the knowledge for doing that, some of that comes from my associate on that, Mino Ravel, and some of that comes from my work in transportation and even being a tree tender and overseeing the tree planting in my neighborhood and city planning. My hope is that people really take climate change and resource depletion seriously. And I think there needs to be a lot of education. We have so much polarization in this country right now, which keeps people from wanting to agree with each other, even on some basic things. And unfortunately, that means that some of that can change and that people will take science seriously. They'll take what's actually right in front of them seriously and be interested and feel like each individual can make a change. I mean, we've collectively done damage. Each of us as an individual has done damage. So each of us as an individual can be part of making change.